Okay, so good morning everyone. Welcome to the series of workshops in Paradox 23. Okay, so I hope you are having a good time here, and this is one of the workshops that we are going to have today. All right, that is co-piloting with ChatGPT. All right, and before we are starting with the workshop, let me just introduce you with the speaker of the workshop today. Please meet Mr. Tejas GN, who is the CTO of Pepper Technologies, and he has also been the part of or the pioneers of MAD 1 and MAD 2 courses of BS degree program. All right, and he's also been key architecture for all the pod thing that we have, right? So that is about him. Sir, anytime when you're ready, you can go ahead.
How many of you have taken like any MAD 1 or MAD 2 courses here? Oh, quite a few. Thank you, first of all, for coming today. This was supposed to be a workshop. I thought it was going to be in a lab kind of a setup where probably we would sit in front of a computer and do something. So how many of you have got your laptop or computer? Quite a few. While we are doing, if you want to do along with me, it's fine. You can do. If you can't do, you can just watch. Yeah, and then probably try it out later. So the idea here is that we are going to see how we can become more productive. Let's say we are all going to be, some of you, maybe not all, are going to be software engineers or some kind of developers, indie developers, developing your own products or working for a company. And it's probably the prime time that you can pick up and build some products. So we'll see how any of the tools available will make that process easier, right? I'll try because I need my hands. We'll see how we can use it to make ourselves more productive and build product, right? That's the whole aim of MAD 1 and MAD 2 course, right? Not just joining a job, but also if you want to develop your own products at home and want to be an indie developer and sell products. Okay, let's see. There is always a hype cycle, right? Like I'm going to use the boards as well. Please don't mind. There is always a hype cycle, right? There is technology enters into the market, right? And people think it's going to grow like that, right? Like what do you call a hockey stick, right? Like, they think, okay, Python entered here. Python is going to be here in like a year, right? Or something new, like I say, Rust entered here, and it's going to be here in like a year's time. And everybody has to be here because it's going to be the peak. But, probably it's not very natural. It happens very rarely in nature as well, that we all, as human beings, grow very slowly, right? It takes, 30, 40 years for you to become mature, hopefully, at that point. Some don't. So we'll see. And more natural thing is, you have steps. You grow by steps, and, probably at some point you'll reach some level of maturity, right? Like, it takes some years. So most of the technologies also work like that. It's usually, it's never like that, unless it's, one in like a million chance. Most technologies work like this. Even if you think of machine learning or AI, it's been in this stage undercover for a long time. Probably it is at this stage now. It will reach next stage, but people think it's already at here, or it has reached its peak. Some people think it's going to fall, right? But it's never like that. It's going to be much more gradual and go to grow up. So we are probably somewhere here, and we are going to see how we use it as developers, not for your clients, right? And there are two ways to use tools, right? Like as developers, you use it to make your own work productive. Also use tools to make your clients' work productive. For example, you are given a job to build an application. That's client's work, right? Like you're building a weather application for them. You could use tools to make it faster or make it easier and things like that. But also you could make your own tools to make your work faster. Let's say people were building pyramids, right? Like thousands of years ago. And people used all kinds of things, cranes, handmade cranes or handmade work, all of that, or animals, elephants, to build the things. Tools where, the client project was great, amazing, right? Like pyramids. It took a lot of time, but amazing end product, right? But it took years, and the productivity was low. Today, if you build the same pyramid, let's assume, maybe you won't build pyramid because it's not required, But let's say you want to build a similarly big building, what you would use? You won't use animals, you won't use handwork, right? You would use the modern tools to build a similar end product, which is useful, right? Like, and what happens is what would have taken 100 years, or let's say 100 days, would probably take 3 days now, right? Due to machinery and other things. So that is what we are seeing today also in the software engineering, right? What it would have taken probably like, a year to build an application if you know the details, right? It's not at 3 days, probably it has reduced by, let's say, 25%. It's probably what you could build in 100 days, probably you could build it in 75 days. And that also depends on, your knowledge and capability and other things. Because software engineering, unlike other things, is not just about machine, it's also about human beings. How do you understand people? How do you understand requirements? How do you bring them all together, right? So that itself has inherent time, which takes. So we're going to look into that part, and within that, we are going to focus on very core small part, where we're going to do some development work, right? Like software engineering has many things in its cycle, from, seeing somebody saying, I want this, right? I want this. Somebody will say, I want this. You have to figure out what is that this, right? And then you deliver that, right? This is cycle, and you have to figure out what is this, and how much that this costs, and how am I going to develop this, etc., and then it becomes that, right? So we'll see this part where it comes. Okay, now I know all the details, how to go about this. How am I going to build it? At this point, mostly what would have happened? You would have gone through the process, divided the work into smaller tasks, and assigned the people smaller tasks. And that part is what we are going to see, and how we are going to see how we can use, currently available technologies. Like, usually developers use what is available for them to make their work easy, right? Like, we are probably the most laziest folks on the planet, right? Like, if we can multiply, we would think, oh, why should I multiply? There is always a calculator, right? So we'll see how do we do that. And today, I just want to do a workshop where I'll show like some parts of it, what you need to take care, what you want, what, the tools can help you, and what you can't do with it, what you can do with it in today's context. If you probably see this talk maybe like 6 months later, it could be outdated because there could be fast development. That's because we are in the middle of the whole this development, where the initial work has already been done, and but we have not polished the whole thing. We are in the middle, so things will be faster. So let's say working with a co-pilot. I don't mean here co-pilot as in just the GitHub co-pilot. Co-pilot as in the sense of actual co-pilot. If you're in a car, your co-pilot is somebody, or your friend, or your spouse, who will look at the maps, who will receive your calls, who will tell you somebody is calling, here is the message, what should I do with this, oh, take left, right? But you are doing the driving, actual driving, right? So that's the co-pilot. It's the same thing in aeroplanes too. Co-pilots just do mapping, weather reading, and other things that will help you to make your work faster and safer. So we are using in that context that how do we work with a co-pilot to make our work faster and better, right? Not replace you by them, right? Like, because the co-pilot came because the process became complex and couldn't be handled by just the pilot. So once upon a time, you were just riding a bullock cart, and you were the only bullock cart on the road. So you didn't need anyone to help you. Today you need maps. Today you need someone to tell you what to look on the left or right if you're driving in a traffic. Then you don't need, but otherwise, right? So that's the meaning of this co-pilot. Okay, let's start with this. I just want you to do one thing for me. Okay, let's see where my mouse is. If you can scan this and see, there's a question. I'll also open the question for you, but if you can answer it to me, it will be great. It's a simple question. Like, there are 3 possible options available today. Here I mean Copilot by GitHub Copilot, that's why capital C. Do you have any access to any of this? Maybe some of them are free. I think the Bard is mostly free if you have applied for it and if you got a chance. ChatGPT, parts of it is free, and I think Copilot is free if you're working for a open source software or if you're part of education. Otherwise, it's charged. So just let me know what you have access to. But today we'll just look at one of them, maybe ChatGPT, and see how to use it. But most of them, with some flexibility, should work in a similar setup. Except for Copilot. Copilot is a very specific thing that works only for development. The other two are a little more generic kind of assistants. Right? I'll refresh it in some time to see what people have access to. I think most people have access to the ChatGPT. Okay. Good to know. So this is what I was saying. Last year or 2 years back, I gave a talk here. This one? I mean, I think you can take a picture and then you can scan the picture. Oh. Okay. I'll go? Okay. This is the result. So more than 50% do have ChatGPT. And rest of you, 2%, which are 2 votes, I think, try register something just to explore, okay? Okay, let's go. This is what I was talking about, what software engineering means. You would hear a lot of hype talks like, people are going to lose so many jobs just because of ChatGPT or Copilot, and we are going to, it's going to be replaced, and, they're going to be economic disruption. Parts of it is true. Like I said, there is somewhere in between the hype and no hype. Parts of it true. There could be reduced jobs in some sectors, and there could be reduced job for certain kind of jobs, just like how machinery, replace some of the human efforts. But that doesn't mean, there won't be drivers, there won't be other people who drive the things, right? Like similarly. So software engineering, I put in like common human language. What it means like from understanding the problem to documentation, where you, in a regular product, you will actually write a manual and give it to someone, right? Like similar to that. What we are going to look at today is, how we could use it in the core part where we actually focus on the development part of it, right? The rest of it, these three are very critical to deliver any real product, and these three are important to make sure that works, right? And here is where you actually build the product, right? Those are the two parts are like, above and below. And the rest of it is what we call non-functional requirements, right? Like these are not actually defined by your clients. No client will tell you, give me a secure product. It's assumed that it's going to be secure. Nobody is going to tell that, it shouldn't come down. It's assumed that it won't come down. So these are what we call non-functional requirements, or NFRs. That's a term people use. So we'll look at it, how when we build something like this, do they take care of these two? Because as human beings, we do know that, there are non-functional requirements which are not told clearly in so many words to be taken care of, which we have, right? Like there is, as human beings, we know how to read faces when we are talking to someone and things like that, and we derive requirements out of that. So we'll see how do we do that, right? This is another question. Just take it so that I know how many of you are in what range of your software engineering cycle, right? Here is the QR. I'll just leave it for another 10 seconds. So most of you are in less than a year, which is like either an student or an intern or started development, which is good actually. I think it makes sense. Okay. So how many of you have heard the term called prompt engineering here? Okay, good that you have heard. Can one of me tell you, just, I don't want like a definition as written, just tell me in like simple words, what does it mean? Anyone? Yeah, go ahead. True, true. But yes, let's say you're sitting in an exam. This is an exam hall, like you're all answering question. Somebody is prompting from outside, right? Like what does he prompt? I mean, that's generally called cheating, which is equally true here too. Somebody is prompting from outside by showing either he may not give you direct answers. Probably he'll tell you like do this, do that, or add this, do that. That generally is what is called prompting, which is same meaning. But here you prompt in a way the tool understands better. It seems like little opposite. What you thought until now was whatever I want to tell the tool, it will understand and do it. But for all it also to do better, you have to speak it in a way it understands, which we would have usually called a programming language, right? Like in Python, you would tell program to add two numbers by saying add variable x plus variable y. But you are verbalizing the same thing here, saying add 5 and 9, whatever that is, right? Like much more verbalizing, but that's called prompt engineering. The term is useful just as a back of your mind to keep it. Just give me 1 second. Okay. The term is useful, not like a hype word, but to do your own research if you want to do some Google search and figure it out and things like that. Also, it's very important to know that just because you think it is intelligent, it's not really that intelligent also. You have to actually prompt it well. You have to give really good inputs for it to develop. Most of the AI tools that is available for developers today are also at the level of if I have to give it like a 1 year experienced developer, right? And you have to tell them clearly what to do. Otherwise, they'll end up doing something, then you will end up fixing it. So you'll have to figure out what to do, right? So let's take an example from our real thing. How many of you did course registration recently? Okay, quite a few. Did anyone of you did NPTEL credit transfer? There is, if some of you have taken NPTEL courses, okay, I think you did, right? Like I think when you get into degree level probably. Credit, okay. So if you have done a NPTEL course, you could actually, it will appear and you could actually do credit transfer from there into your online degree. So the credits get added and you don't have to do the courses here. That was all the thing, and that was introduced as part of course registration, this terms registration. So the logic that came to us as like a human described was, we want to do credit transfer. People would have taken courses on NPTEL, and they can take up to maximum, I think, 4 credits this time, and that can include how many ever courses, right? That was the requirement that came from the office team here, right? Like like add a form or build a form as part of your course registration. Along with others, student can also do course credit transfer, where it would be a maximum 4 courses, and then we'll do the transfer. So we thought we'll do it in the front end itself. It's just a validation. If there is a course people are trying to add, let's say there are 4 courses here. Let's say there are, I'll just take a chalk, duster. So let's say in the kitty of courses, kitty of courses, there are 4 courses. Let's say C1, C2, C3, and C4. Let's say student has this many, which he has done on NPTEL. Maybe he wants to transfer it to his online degree. With some conditions, he can transfer. And let's say each one of them has like some credits associated with it. Let's say 3 and 3. These are the credits, but maximum you can take 4 credits can be transferred as part of this term. That was the logic. Now it's a simple logic. Like when someone adds let's say 3 and 2, based on the condition, it can say yes or no, you can add or not. If they add 3 and 3, it can say yes or no. It can add 1 or 2, it can say yes or no. If there is another one, let's say C5 with 4 credits, you can add yes or no. There was a condition that add the courses, but within the courses, it should be minimum viable. In the sense, but that came much later. I'll tell you, when we started probing, it wasn't there initially. So what we thought was, 1 or 2 added, it's fine because it's less than 3, which is a valid test case, it passes. 2 and 3 is fine because it matches 4, you will get maximum 4, but you can take 2. And this is not fine, 1, 2, 3, because it's not required, right? Either it can do 3 plus 1 or 3 plus 2. It's that 1 is not required. But when you're adding into the kitty box, you will add this C1 first, then you will add C2, then there is one more pending, you can add something. When you add C3, it looks okay for the logic, right? Like that's what you would think. Now let's see what the machine did. Okay, so here is what we thought, right? Like we thought the course credits are 1, 2, 3, 4 is 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. The person has done 5 courses at NPTEL. He wants to transfer. Maximum credits allowed are 4. Course 2 is allowed because it's 4. Course 3 is allowed, like etc. etc. And these are the cases which are not allowed. Does that make sense? This is the thing. After actually speaking to the person multiple times, whoever was giving the requirement, a human arrived at this. Now we have to convert this into a prompt to actually for it to write a script, like, or for it to write the code. So I'll show you the exact one, how it went through. You can also do, if someone is trying, you can give this into the prompt and ask for it to write a function to validate it. Those who have the computer open, so it's started like this. I'll just, this is like much later, I think. Not this, give me 1 second. This is much later when I knew much better the requirement. There's so many things that I've done. Is the net working? Can someone check if you're connected to the same? No, not you. I was talking to someone here. Give me one more minute. I'll just wait for them to come back. It started working. Okay, it's not opening the existing one. Let me just give me one more minute, please. I'll just find it again. Usually happens, demo fails. Okay, I think it's very slow. That's the problem. So, anyone able to try it out on their computer? Those who had access to the computer and to the ChatGPT? No? You can't see? Okay, just give me 1 second. I'll open it. Net is very slow on my computer here. That's why. Okay, anyway, I think we can just start it from the beginning then if it's not. Or we can look at the other thing before. Okay, here, let's check this. Okay. Here it is. So, can you see it? Can you see it? So, I just went with the first requirement that they gave me, like, I have 4 courses that are checklist. Just give me a method to validate, right? A simple thing that I thought. Of course, it thought that, I would want in Python, which is probably the most popular language. But I just wanted in JavaScript, so I asked it to write in JavaScript. Here's what it thought. It would validate the selected courses, which is on the right side once you select, right? And course credits, which is actually in dictionary that I showed you here. Right, the dictionary I showed you, course credit, right, and then the maximum credit allowed, which is just a variable to show 4. It went through this. Can someone tell me what's wrong with this? How many of you know any JavaScript here? Okay. Nothing is wrong actually. It's just sorting by the course credit, and it's just adding and just saying if the max selected courses is less than the max credit allow, it's just telling you true or false. That's all it is. It's kind of trying to simplify it. The problem with this is it kind of excludes all the other corner cases. It kind of solves for the obvious case, which is just add up all the things that they have given. Let's say if they are given 3 plus 3 6, then if it's less than 4, then it's fine. If it's more than 4, it's not allowed, something like that, right? But the case was actually, I just told a student is going to select the courses. I mean, see, if you even if you repeat the same thing, sometimes it may not happen the same way for you. might give little bit different answer, you need to be little more creative. But I was just going to tell you what all kind of input it needs to actually arrive at like a useful thing and how long it takes, right? Then I told, okay, student is going to select the things. Then it thought I might need like a whole class, right? Like whole class of course validator where there is add course and can add course thing where it will check for the validation here. If it's allowed, then it can do. But I really did not want this actually. So I went down again and I said, okay, let's check back the same thing, right? I mean, I was going to experiment with the same thing for a little bit more. Then I tried adding more things and see whether it's allowing or whether the cases are failing or passing. So it said, current course credits is 1, so it's true. 3, it's true. 6, it's also said true because the maximum allowed is 8, right? And I'm going to just play with the maximum allowed credit is 4. So it just again the last one it said the course 1 addition is false since it would exceed, but here it's adding one by one, right? First you added 3, which is 1, then you added 4, which is 4, which is 2, which became 3 plus 1, 3, total 3. So when you add another 3, it would become 6, and it thought it would exceed the maximum allowed credit, which is true because I didn't tell it, it can be allowed, but with minimal things, which is what we missed at the beginning as well. Even in my requirement in the beginning, they just, the input I got was maximum credit allowed is 4. They didn't allow that it could cross as long as 2 internal ones is possible to choose 2 internal ones which could cross 4, but individually or parts of it may not cross 4, right? For example, 3 plus 3 is fine, and individually it won't cross 4, but 1 plus 2 plus 3 is not fine because internally it would 3 and 2 are sufficient. That was actually even missed in the use case, which which would happen to any developer, right? Like that we missed and it missed and we missed too, right? Then I had to come back and tell it like give an example. At some point I had to tell go down. So I said max credit can be exceeded with minimal courses. So the word here is with the minimal courses. Like I can choose this as long as internally the minimal courses make up that I can exceed it. It can't be like I can have multiple choices within that. That's what I told that, right? Like at that point it gave me this function, which is actually, you can see it is kind of sorting, then adding up. Then at some point if it exceeds, it's going to take a break and then return the subset. It's actually giving me here the subset, that minimal subset, instead of giving me true or false, which is not the thing I want. So I said, okay, let's see what happens. Finds the smallest subset of courses, which I don't want it to find the smallest subset. I want to just see if there is a smallest subset exists within this, then it's a case of false. It can't be valid, right? Then we continued to have. Then I actually gave the word find minimal exceeding subset. Okay, I tried other ways to do it, and finally it gave me this, which is similar to what it was before. Instead of giving a subset, it is returning true or false here, right? There is a problem here too. Can someone see? So what it is doing, it is actually sorting. Once you select 1, 2, if you selected 1 to 3, it will select 1 to 3, and then it keeps adding. At some point, if it crosses the thing, if it becomes equal or crossing, it will return true or it will return false, right? That's the case. But there is a problem here. Can anyone identify the problem? There is a case that will fail. Correct. There is a case of reverse sorting also, which could go wrong. But there is another case. I'll show you. So I gave the example of 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. The problem was, I think I gave it a use case of easy set of inputs for it to test. So then I had to be a little more creative, give other use cases for it to check. So I gave like a bigger case where there could be complexities, because here I can just select course 2, or I can select course 3 and course 1, etc., etc. So when I gave that, you can see course 1 and 5, 1 and 5 is allowed. I think it will return true. True. The second one returns false, and the third one also returns false. Let's see what is third one, second one, 2 and 3. 2 and 3 is false, which is correct. We don't need, because just by course 2 it satisfies the condition, right? We don't need 3. But course 1, 4 and 5, let's say 1, 4 and 5, it kind of returns false, which is it correct, 1, 4 and 5? Yeah. 1, 4 is 2, 5, and yeah, which is correct. So I gave, selected course is equal to course 2, which is just 4. Then it actually returns false, which is actually wrong. It should actually return true, because you can just select 1, right? I mean, that should have worked. Then it did some changes again and gave me this, which again fails for some of the other course conditions. You can go on, go on, go on. And then the problem is also that problem is because in the final it is returning false. That's why for one single course it returns false. If you look at this, I'll probably share this. The final case actually where it is, we are selecting only one, it is using this part and returning false, because it's not entering any of this. That's why. Okay. Now finally it didn't give me, it gave me like a very close to reality, this one, which was most close to what I wanted, but still not really what I wanted. Finally, the thing that I wrote was this, right? Here's the final thing that I wrote. You can see it has the same thing. This first few lines are by the AI. Then here is what I did. So I'll tell you what case this is required, or you can go explore at home which case this comment is required. And there is this also. Even if it doesn't exceed the maximum credit limits, it should be allowed. For example, some people might select only one course, and we don't need to, up to 4 it is, right? And can exceed 4 in some conditions. So that's why this final condition is required, and it returns true here. And there is one of these conditions which I'll leave it to you as an exercise, because I've written the test cases below. If you can look at the test cases below, you can see I've written all the test cases of various things, and this should pass. So I'll share this with you. You can try out all these test cases where the code that I have added will make into sense. Now today, what did you become actually here? Like while doing this, what is the productivity gain that I got? So there is this concept of rubber ducky, right? Like in software engineering, there's a rubber ducky concept where, if you're working alone like me at home, you need someone to talk to. Like I'll just say, oh, I'm stuck. What do I do now? Okay, give me just one step to trigger your thinking for the next step. You don't need the full solution. You just need one step for someone to talk. It could be wrong too. Doesn't matter. So that's what this is doing. Just that it's a talking rubber ducky, right? Like, and also, 50-60% of the time it also talks sense, right? So that way you have a conversational partner to work with. Also, you have someone to work along with. Also, you can borrow its code and then add to yours, right? So is my development cycle or my productivity increase? It probably took me, all of this took me like maybe 10-15 minutes, let's say. Would I have taken more time to do this by myself? I think the answer is true. I would have taken more time. Instead of 15 minutes, I would have probably taken 45 minutes, because I had to write the initial thing. Copy paste is much faster than typing. All of that included, right? Like, and even the thought process. I just don't want to name the variables. Someone knows my way of variable naming, let them name it, and things like that, right? So So basically the concept here is it's not going to replace you, but you can work with along with it to make yourself much better. But what you need to know is what you want. What you need to know is what test cases you want it to clear. Like if you don't know this and the first part, it can write something that you won't be able to validate or clean, right? And that way, I think it's a really useful tool. Whatever we had, I think most of us still code in VI or something very simple like Sublime Text. Then IDEs came and you had inputs from it. This is probably the next level. So this is one thing that I wanted to show. Next thing I wanted to show is maybe another example that I think we would have done. How many of you had done that weather, open weather API and a view widget in the Mat2 course or something like that? Some of you, right? So that was an example given by Nitin, Professor Nitin, in one of his first demo classes, like how easily you can build up a widget, right? Like let's assume that we'll do the same thing here, right? I've written it here, but I can still write it again, right? Like I can say, okay, let me just share it first. So I can just write, let's say, write a view widget to show weather information. Let's say temperature from open weather API, right? I think that's the simplest one. Like just give me write a widget where a view, for people who don't know, is just a front-end framework like React or any other. It's a JavaScript framework to build the UIs in the web. Now what we want it to do is, we want it to build a simple widget on a website to show the weather and read the weather from Open Weather API. Open Weather is like a very open thing. You can probably use it. It's free. And also there is a paid version. Okay, let's see what it does. So it's, if you know view, okay. If you know view, it's pretty much clean code, right? Like this is what you would have wanted. You have a widget here which generates HTML template, and you have a JavaScript part where it reads your city, let's say Chennai, and reads it from API from the weather.com or open weather map, and then once the response comes back, you're going to set it in the widget. That's it. It's pretty straightforward, right? Like even if you don't know Vue or React anything, let's assume it's just a HTML. API is being called and it's been shown. That's it. Now actually this uses Node.js, but I don't want to use Node.js. I just want to use a CDN version. The difference is in Node.js, you have to create a Node.js project, you have to build it, you have to compile it, you have to do all of that. I don't want to do it any of this. I just want a CDN version. So I'm just going to make the next thing called, give me a CDN version, right? So it's the same thing. Now it gives in an HTML CDN direct format where I could just, otherwise the content is same inside, right? This whole thing will run in the browser. Now tell me what's wrong with this. It will work. I can show you the demo, but I don't want to show the demo. You can try it, but tell me what is wrong with this. This whole thing will run in the front end. Yeah? So here is a non-defined requirement, right? You want to keep your application safe, right? And it still doesn't know. So what happens if the whole thing, for example, let's copy this code. Okay. Let me just see if I have yes, I do have. Copy the key. I'm just, here is where I'm giving, I'm opening my key to all of you to read it. Okay, I will change it later, but here. Chennai. Let's see if we can run this, okay. Okay. I'll just start a simple HTTP server. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, let's go back. Okay, let's see. Right, it's showing the widget. You can see the temperature has been full. Ignore all the character things. It's showing 34.42, which I think is an underestimate. But here is the problem. Right, anyone can do V page sales, and they can see. All right. So some of you should have guessed it, but it doesn't know that it needs to keep that key secret. Right, like I know it because nobody told me, but I know it because I need to keep it secret. So it still doesn't know. So that's where I have to go back to it and tell it, you know, let's go back and tell it to do it. So like some of you at least know Flask, right? Flask is a backend framework. You can use any of those, but I'm just going to use Flask. So I'm going to tell do a proxy call to open weather API using Flask. Let's, oh, I made a spelling mistake. Okay. So this is what it's doing now. So what it is doing now is actually you are building your own proxy in the backend where you call your get weather, and that does actually the call and returns to you, right? If I mean, I can run this, but it's the same thing what it is doing. I just have to replace the call to local/weather instead of actually calling the open weather API, right? Here, this part of the code is not visible to the front end user, right? Like we can start that also and try. Let's see. Let me just copy it first. Okay. What do we call this? App.py. Okay. And let me just add another route. Let's call it slash only. Return. How do I return a template? Yeah, I can just return in HTML, right? I'm just going to ask it. Add an index route to return HTML as well. Okay, let's see. Yeah, okay. This is what I want. Cool, let's add that part. Okay. So it now actually did whatever I wanted. Both of them, right? Like I have everything here, and then it did the index HTML as well. Now I can just call the index HTML, which will call actually, you can see here weather, my own weather, and then calls. So here's like two-step thing. So what we learned here is like you need to know something to actually tell you to do exactly what you want to do it. Otherwise, it will do in the most easiest way, and that may not be the most ideal way to do it, right? Here, there are still problems with this, right? Now, anybody is allowed to call this endpoint, right? Anybody is allowed to call this endpoint, right? I might want to secure this. At least I want it to be used only by browser, not by console, or remote calls. Or I want it to be cookie protected. I can even go add like let's say protect the end point using the cookie. Like again, spelling mistake, ignore it. But it can do it because flash session is directly there. If you have learned it, it will be there, and you can just add the cookie to check it, right? So now what we learned is we can't not learn. Now you need to know Flask to know the words route, what routing does, where it interacts. You need to know how cookie authentication works to ask it to do it. Like it's basically if you know, let's say you're building a house and you have some mestris who have come to build a house. Now you need to know to tell them what to do. If you don't know yourself, then they'll do whatever they want. And then finally you'll be like, oh, this is not what I asked for, right? Or it breaks after 2 days and it'll be like, oh, it broke. And he said, no, you asked me to build this, so I've built this. So similarly, it'll just do whatever you ask it to do. So you will have to be very specific because it kind of learns from most of it. ChatGPT is fed through internet, so it kind of takes up the examples and does after that. So you need to know what to do. You need to know to ask specific things. You need to know what specifically requirements are to do the thing, and you need to know how to validate it and QC it. So you still need to do the rest of the software engineering, right? Like if you see the software engineering, rest of it you can outsource certain tasks to it. So basically, when someone tells it's going to replace whole software engineering and things, it does to a certain level how probably like a JCB did some workers, right? Like it did replace workers, but there has to be some other people to do it, manage it, and run it, maintain it, all of that. So that's what I think, and I think all of you should use it. I mean, I don't know whether your coursework allows to use it or not use it. That's a completely secondary thing because the point to do coursework there is not to do this whole thing. The point there is to know what to do rather than what exactly to do. Like you should know the steps to do and what it means to do, right? Like that's why you have a coursework. But this is actually exact doing. So in your free time, feel free to use it, experiment it, build smaller projects using things, and then you would know what things you should know to ask it to do. And that was the purpose of this session, just to tell you like you need to know things to ask it to do better. Otherwise, you will get a very low grade product, which you may not want to show it to anyone. So that's it actually. I just wanted to show some demos. It's probably like one of our coding sessions mostly. If I have questions, I'll answer. Otherwise, I'll just end abruptly. Yeah?
So, as it learns from your prompts, next time does it automatically, like if multiple people are given the same prompt,
so I think
start to basically predict the first code itself? I mean, I assume that it would.
So I think it depends on the terms and conditions of OpenAI. So within your settings, I think you can allow it to share your prompts and responses and that thumbs up and thumbs down with the OpenAI that it can rebuild. But I think if you don't select, and I don't know how true they are, if you don't select, it may not. But ideally, I think if you selected sharing with them and if you do proper up and down, it should learn. And over time, it should become a little more better, like any other developer. Yeah, any other questions? That's it. Then we can end it.
Sir, on the help of development of such kind of tools like ChatGPT or GPT, what could be your perspective on reducing the logical understanding of the people who is using it in the next generation? Will it reduce the IQ level, logical understanding? What could be your perspective on this?
I mean, it depends. Let's say has the calculators made you more dumb or better? That's a question, right? Like, do people know addition? Do you folks know how to add or multiply? Like, you don't need to know, right? I mean, probably you don't know. Like, if I ask you to multiply a million into 2.24446, you don't know. But you know how to do it if required, right? Like, you can bring up a paper and do it. I think it would be the same. I don't think it is anything better. I mean, to be very frank, I think ChatGPT is like a calculator for text. Given in correct input, it will give you output, but he should know.
ChatGPT, what actually does it like? Why will it always give me the optimized model or something like that? Because my requirements, I give my requirements. Will it always give me the best possible way, or it's going to give me the one of the way to solve it?
I mean, we just saw it may not give you the best possible way. I'm guessing it will give you one of the ways it knows or thinks better.
Actually learns it, like if we could say, or
I mean, that's what we were just talking. It depends. See, I think technology doesn't work in isolation, right? ChatGPT is also a company. It has terms and conditions. You are a human being. You are interacting with this. You have your own terms and conditions. You agree to share, doesn't agree to share. They agree to implement. All of that depends. So, if all that works well, let's say, then yeah, it should learn.
Firstly, ChatGPT give you a different answer as you go on. If I ask the same question today and I ask a same question tomorrow, will it give a different answer?
It can. I don't think there is any predefined way that it can answer. It can. For the same set of text, also it can give a different answer based on the model. I think they also keep updating the model, right? So it can.
So, two questions. Firstly, the ethical questions of using ChatGPT, especially in the industry, how far is it used as of now? Do people consider it to be cheating, or how does that work?
No, I don't think people consider it as cheating. Let me be clear on that first part. I mean, it's just like first, I'll go back to the calculator stage. We had accountants for a long time, right? It was a full-time job. Somebody would sit with a register, enter details, and he would have assistants to sum up, distribute money, all of that. Then something like Tally or some computers came, they did something, or before that even calculator came, it reduced something. Nobody thought using calculator was a cheating, right? Like later, even colleges started allowing them in exams. Today, you probably use calculators even in exam, right? Without calculator, you can't write an exam probably. So I don't think it is considered as cheating. It is considered a tool currently. Now, does it mean that it is considered cheating or not in the educational sector where you are evaluating yourself? Maybe. For example, if I ask a first standard kid, add 3 plus 3, and he brings out a calculator and does 6, that is considered cheating, right? Like, because you are trying to test his power, like ability to add. So when I ask you to write a route here in Flask, and if you bring out that, then it is considered cheating, unless it's an open book text, thing, where I wouldn't give you that problem. I'll probably give a very high level problem. I'll just say write a program that would solve this problem. Then, it's up to you. Then it's an open question, open book question. So there the evaluation will be completely different. So that way, I think cheating, the meaning of the cheating also differs. The second thing, how much it is used in the industry, I think it varies from industry to industry. People are still vary in some parts of the industry because it's a different company, they have different terms and conditions. We don't know what is happening to the things that you are entering, and people are copy pasting all kinds of things, including passwords, API keys into it, right? So we don't know what's happening to that. So there are some sectors of industry which they don't allow third party things, but they have the models running within the company and their own interfaces to run it, right? You can also try, if you have a 16 GB and some GPU on a computer, you can probably download GPT for all and run it on your computer and like get a similar interface. It may not be as great because they have much better resources, but you can still run your own internal GPT-like interface on your computer. So some companies use only that because they want to keep the data internal. Some of them are like independent developers and small companies. It doesn't matter much, so they'll end up using it.
A quick follow-up then. Where do we draw the line? So, for example, if someone tries to use code generated from ChatGPT in a safety critical system.
I mean, I think that's where the validation comes into picture, right? You can use. I mean, nobody is going to tell you like how do you going to code. You can code however you want to code, but the whole rest of the process, validation, QC, that's what even today, even if I write the code, there is a tester and there's a whole QC process to certify it to go out. Regardless of who writes, it's like a box, it's a separation, right? You could write it with any of the inputs you want, and there is some other person who's going to validate and pass it. Like, for example, in banking, regardless how you write, somebody has to validate it. They will validate it.
But then the task of validation will again get delegated to ChatGPT. So you check your own code.
Maybe and may not be. It depends on what are the impacts, right? Like at some point you need a human to sue. Like if you lose money, you're not going to sue a computer, you're going to sue a bank, which means you're going to sue some human being, right? So at some point a human being is accountable. I mean, hence, if you see the aeroplanes can mostly fly by themselves, right? Autopilots can do almost everything today. They can land, they can take off, they can run through the winds and all kinds of things. But you still have a pilot, right? For two reasons. One, if something happens, they want someone to bring or resign or be accountable. Two, if something else fails, other humans want to see a human face who is rescuing them, right? It's very important. Emotional connect is very important. So some industries will have it, like medicine. The last point is there are things that we still don't know. So you still need a human intuition at some point, right? So that's why there is a human pilot even today. Even with eye surgery, for example, if you do LASIK surgery, most of the operation is done by like a robot. It gets it done in 5 minutes, but there's a doctor standing and watching. Because you don't know, because the power could go in India, right? It has happened. It has happened. Like the power has gone in between the operation and the human has to continue. And these are unpredictable stuff, right? So there are, that's where you draw the boundary.
So considering our basic program has a 50% stuff related to programming and 50% related to data science and machine learning and all those stuff. I'm sure many of us who are yet to take the plunge or change our career in any of these two fields might be confused whether to go for backend development or front-end development or whether to go for data science, considering that is a hot topic everywhere. So is there any area in backend development apart from ChatGPT, which works as a co-pilot while writing code, where data science, the interaction or the intersection of data science or the machine learning part happens, other than helping us write code?
Sure. I mean, there is actually quite a good products coming in the data visualization part. Like, for example, the biggest part of today is asking the database for answers, right? Like, one is, I mean, generally we call it structured query language, right? Where you can see the center word query is asking it, right, to give an answer. So there are actually some people working on interesting products which you could ask database, give me the maximum profit today. I mean, instead of writing select star sum of totals from orders, it would write the query, run the query, and give you the answers. Or draw a graph of daily orders versus date, and things like that. So there are some good products being developed there. Just as an end product, I'm not talking about core products that are used, but as like an end user product. So there are interesting products there. There are interesting products even in the just as regular backend, because when you actually run the whole structure, it's at some point you have like a servers running, right? Like you need monitoring, observation, and analysis of observation, whether your server is running well, are they consuming more power, less power, all of that, right? Like there are a lot of interesting products written there, both backend and data, to even maintain server farms and things like that. I mean, I think it's up to our creativity, I guess.
How do you see it changing in next 5 years, the backend development part or even the front-end development part?
that's hard to predict 5 years line. In the next 1 or 2 years, I think there will be a significant improvement in the productivity of people if they are interested. That's what I would guess. That's all. I mean, productivity as in the sense, not the productivity of the people who begin with, because I think when you begin with, if it may not help you that much, other than trying to replace what you are trying to do. But let's say you are you have at least 2 years of experience in doing this work every day, then I think your productivity significantly improves. Then you have got like interns working for you type, you know, or you have junior developers working for you, whom you can ask to do certain stuff. Like that. That's how I see it.
You said that ChatGPT is not considered a cheating, right? So I have a case scenario where a software developer he outsourced his project to a China company.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when his company found out, he was fired.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Same thing is happening with GPT.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what's your take on this?
That is considered cheating because of the contract, right?
Why is it considered cheating when he has outsourced his own project?
True. I mean, I think the contract would have probably written you can't share it outside you.
But he's not sharing any confidential information.
How do you know?
He just
I mean, it's the whole product itself is confidential stuff, right?
doing the same thing, right? ChatGPT also you are sharing some confidential information.
So here you are conflicting between the ruling authority who consider it as cheating versus the person, right? Like it's the same thing with the educational institution, right? Once IIT Madras says you can't use ChatGPT for development or running your courses, then if you use, then it is, right? Or you can't bring calculator into exam. You can bring. If you use it outside, nobody considers it cheating. But if you use it inside the classroom test room, it is considered cheating, right? So it's the same difference. If the company says that you are supposed to do the work, you can't outsource, and it has not to be shared outside the thing, then it is. Let me give another example. Let's say company A outsources to company B, outsources to company C. It happens in the regular world. And the legal word is there you can outsource. Then I think it wouldn't matter.
So thank you so much for such an insightful talk. It was great to know that how we can use ChatGPT in a regular workflow. So, personally, I'm not that pessimistic about the advancements which are happening, but a certain section of our tech industry is against it. They have been come up with this 6 months of
Pause time.
moratorium, which they to pause the development of AI for 6 months to introduce some guardrails. They say so. This has triggered a huge debate, and there are many professors from CMU, Indian Zurich, who are coming in support of this 6 months pause. So, what do you think about it?
So, I mean, I'll answer that question. Is the two conditions before that I answer. One is it's above my pay grade. I am not in the sense I'm not a ethical researcher. I have to be honest, right? Like I have to be honest about myself, where my point of view comes from. I'm not a researcher who dwells into ethics of. I do read like you. I'm interested. I do believe in Constitution of India. I do believe in ethics. So there are some concerns that I have to, but I'm not qualified enough to make a public comment. So sometimes I do make smaller comments of things, but I'm not qualified enough to make like a big public announcement. So that's one thing. And the second thing is I'm not qualified as any of those 60 people that have signed that thing. Okay, with that, there are of course large concerns. I think if you read the history, I think the most important part of the history was 1920s to 1960s, where industrial revolution took place. And it had many benefits too, and it had a lot of not so good things happening around it. Concentration of wealth, bad labor laws, overusing people and people's left, and just unrest, in the society because of economical imbalance and things. So the concerns that they've raised is actually quite valid. So when you think of a tool that could reduce, let's say, even 25% of employability in a society, which is as big as probably India or even US, any of those big, I'm just going to talk about democracies, big democracies, there is going to be unhappiness and going to be economic imbalance for sure. So ideally, we should learn from what has happened before during industrial evolution and take learnings from there and use that now so that the same things don't repeat. So I don't know whether the answer to that is pausing for 6 months or pausing for 5 years or limited release. I don't know the answer, but what I can say is the concerns are valid. Yeah.
Sir, I can see the AI will develop in stages. So like we are on stage 2 or 3 of ChatGPT. So according to you, what would be the next stage like? What will be the next, like from basic AI to ChatGPT and now?
I don't know in terms of product, I don't know what it could be, but there are in industries that could also make I mean today we are only talking software assistants, right? And when it comes along with the hardware assistance, I think it could lead much. I mean it could have a newer products, newer sets of things. Okay. Let me think. How many of you have those vacuum cleaners at home? Those small vacuum cleaners at home that runs around, right? That's an interesting product, right? Like imagine similar thing. I mean it's the robot that we have closer to which we have seen in movies, right? Walking around, cleaning, doing our dirty work, basically, right? And in the next cases, it could have, I mean, the whole, our imagination in terms of movies is always robots have hands and legs, which may not happen because it's not practical. Let's say the next set of generation of machines with some smartness can cook, clean, do other things that you may not want to do. Again, that I would consider as in my head, I would consider it as the next level, but I don't know beyond that either. I mean, I think it left to your imagination. Okay, we do have time. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, first, second, and third. Okay.
Then they launch GPT-4. Then we get some details and only few people are getting access to this. Then we get the details how to access it.
Yeah, I think one way is to pay. Sorry to say it is the most, it's not owned by me, so I can't say any other way. Other ways, I think they have some limits per day, right? Like that you can use. I mean, I think GPT-4, there are things. I think even the guy who runs OpenAI, Sam, yeah, he's an interesting guy. He gave recently, not a talk, maybe a paper or presented in the Congress. There is a video of him talking to the congressmen, about a 40 minutes video. Have a look at it, go through it. It's an interesting take by the person who runs it. So take it with a pinch of salt with what he says as well. Some of the things, for example, it does, ChatGPT does a lot of hallucinations. When I say that, it kind of lies. For example, if it doesn't know something, it doesn't tell I don't know. It's like a student who is under the exam, who is called for Viva. If you ask him something, he's just going to say something, assuming the other person doesn't know, and he will pass me. Exactly, it does the same thing. So ChatGPT, and the usual term that is used for that is called hallucination, where you imagine things and answer. I have an example actually. I'll show it to you later, or I can share it with you. So some of the things, some of the factual things, which you think it's factual, it makes up. For example, one of the things was I was blogging for 20 years, so I wanted to pick up top 20 blogs written by me. So I just asked it, give me top 20 blogs. Then it gave me a list of top 20 blogs. These are the links and these are the things. None of them were true. So it didn't know, and what it looked like was the titles were so correct. If you, correct in a sense, it would, I would imagine I would write such a blog. You know, if someone who knows me and tells me, oh, Tejas has written a blog about ChatGPT, is it? Oh, yeah, maybe he would have written. So it made up the whole thing. So there was a lot of cases of hallucination, especially for ChatGPT. I think that has reduced quite a bit in 4, and it can also understand a little bit better in 4. Those are the two things that I have noticed because they don't release a version notes or anything like that. There was second person and third person, and then 4.
Sir, can you explain a little bit about the co-powered AI-generated web search engines like we have Bing right now and Google?
Mm-hmm.
And also, can you explain a bit about the AI-generated images? Like recently, while I was surfing on Bing, there was one feature where you can generate AI-generated images of a bear. And I mean, for an example, they have showed us. I mean,
Okay, the first one, the current GPT version doesn't have access to internet in the sense it can't access the current internet on behalf of you. There are though plugins available. You can, if you go to the plugins, part, you can go select some plugins, and then it can do search on behalf of you. When you say, what is internet, AI enabled internet search, whatever, the idea is, once upon a time you had to write like a very clear instruction for Google search or Bing to, search for you on internet. Now you can be a little more lucid, little more loose, and you can talk like human being to ask, and it can do search on behalf and summarize for you. Basically, it can go pick up the top 20 and do some summarization and choose for you. That's what, at the basic level what it means, right? Like beyond that, I think it's their confidential, you can do. Like most of them do that much at least. The other thing is, I think you should probably go read about Stable Diffusion or any of the text to image generation things, models, or go to, is it Hugging Face? Yeah. Go to Hugging Face and look for models which can generate from, text to image. You can download it and try it out. I'll, yeah. With the help of ChatGPT, of it. Oh, like that. Oh, they should pay me then, no? You can as well ask ChatGPT, what do you want? It probably will ask, I need a kidney and a heart. Uh, I don't know actually what I would want. Probably two things I would want. I mean, personally, I would want like an audio to text. If it, as much as I can type, I can speak better. So maybe I can speak rather than typing, one thing. And I also don't like this interface of copying from here to do. I mean, this is specifically from a practicing developer point of view. So I've been trying a couple of add-ons which works along with, notebooks with ChatGPT and stuff like that. So that's been interesting. So at some point, maybe they'll have a native integration of that. I think you should also try notebook and ChatGPT integration. It's quite useful when you are experimenting. Notebooks themselves are very useful to work, and this will add like a layer on top. Yeah, that's where their add-ons are for. You can go explore. So some of you are, have you heard the term called Open API? Open API? Yeah. So if you write an Open API document and you build an API, you can give that Open API document to the ChatGPT, and it can understand the Open API documentation. Let's say your Open API had two APIs, get weather and get pin code, let's say. So then you can add that Open API document as a add-on inside the ChatGPT, and then you can ask directly, get weather for Chennai, and then ChatGPT will ask. It would understand the like human thing, it will convert, and then it will ask that open API, pass on the variables or attributes required to call that API, get the response and answer you back. So maybe you can add your own features like that, and other than that, I think there is also embeddings. You can go explore. Embeddings is not specific to ChatGPT. It's like, so there is a built model already. This is from application point of view, not from the research point of view. So I'm going to be very at a higher level. There is a built model which its own knowledge, understanding everything. Now you have your own data. Let's say you want to search your own Google Docs, all the Google Docs you have written, right? Let's say I've written some 25 Google Docs in the past. So I just want to search, give me from my Google Docs, write an essay about IIT Madras. I'll say you worked in 2020 on all of that kind of thing. So embeddings is bringing your own data and along with the model and then querying that. So you can try out that also to add function. Okay. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Maybe this is a naive question to ask, but I'll ask it anyway. Considering that ChatGPT is a tool to look at the problem-solving approach, where does the whole jobs are in danger or concern?
No, I don't think that's what I said. So there is even if you consider the chain of software engineering, right? Like today, there are various roles, and they have their own job descriptions. There's a project manager, there's a team lead, there's a QC head, and there are like a lot of what we call honeybees, right? Like worker bees, who do actually whatever instruction you give, they'll do that. To that level, I think some of that jobs could be at risk. Because, at some point, so that also brings in danger that, as to what will happen to the future generation of things. If you don't have entry-level engineers today, and if they don't grow to become a senior software engineers or a staff engineer in 2-3 years, let's say in 10 years, who will take up that role of staff engineer, right? Like, because, we kind of replace many by this. Now there are only few, and there may not be. It's like if you replace all the junior doctors today, thinking, okay, what do? They read from the textbook and give you the instructions, which is what probably this does. Then where will you get senior doctors in 5-10 years from now? It could happen. That's one of the dangers which many people think that could happen to the world as well. Like there are so many forgotten art, right? Like for example, if you get your mechanical watch repaired today, you have no one to repair it. Now you have to find somewhere in the world who is repairing it. So it can work both ways, that many people lost job, as well as one person who's doing that job gets whatever he asked for.
So would that eliminate most of the hallucination and biases problem that will come along with?
Yes and no. I think so. It would probably. I think people are doing a lot of research how to reduce it. There's one of the problems with also. I've been reading as well, just like you. One of the problems is also like it's not very deterministic, right? Like the answers are not deterministic. Like someone asked, like will it answer the same way every time? It may not. So the bigger problem with the generative text is how do we test them well? There's no real way to test them well. It's like testing a human being. It depends on mood, temperature, weather, all of that. So there's a lot of research also going on in how do we test it. Like how do we test whether it works in a certain way or certain results are expected when certain inputs are given. So I think once that improves, probably we can test and have a better answer to your question.
The reason is because the data input, the learning model gets much controlled as compared to the larger thing that they do through web scraping.
Maybe. I actually don't know.
And have you heard of any models implemented with regards to integrating it with many other stuff like your predictive maintenance into a large plant wherein you could get details real time, analyze it, and the model would be able to implement which part, which area to optimize with regards to
I don't know specifically, but I don't know whether you really need like a GPT like model there. You might need a very specific and different model there. You may not even need like a creative, it doesn't need to invent anything, right? Like in that case, it needs to analyze the existing things and come up with the results. Maybe you don't even need this model there. I have no answer to that. You should ask Bharti madam. I think she is a better person. But again, you've been asked to do like 3 plus 3, and if you bring calculator, I think they will call it cheating. That's it, I think. I'm done. Thank you so much. You have been a great audience.
Thank you, sir.